All right, let's jump right into an explainer that is going to completely transform how you look at the everyday stuff you buy. Today, we're drawing directly from researchers Cynthia Enloe's eye-opening work on the international political economy. We're going to peel back the layers of global trade, to reveal this hidden thread that connects corporate boardrooms, international banks, and, well, the price tags on your favorite products. Now, to kick things off, I really want you to look at your own life and ask yourself this specific question. What do the bananas sitting in your fruit bowl and the blue jeans hanging in your closet actually have in common? On the surface, absolutely nothing, right? But as you'll see, the answer connects your home to a massive, highly calculated international political machine, one that relies on a very specific set of ideas to function. That brings us to Section 1, the myth of cheap goods. Let's start with the grand illusion we've all kind of bought into when it comes to the price of our daily consumption. I mean, we all love a good deal. But the source material here challenges us to rethink what cheap actually means. The absolutely crucial point is that women's labor isn't naturally cheap. It is systematically made cheap. Executives, governments, and international lenders actually create deliberate policies, what Enloe identifies as patriarchal alliances, to devalue this labor and maximize corporate profit. Nobody's work is just automatically unrewarded. It requires constant, deliberate effort from the top down to keep those costs suppressed. Let's move on to Section 2, the gender politics of bananas. So let's look at our first case study to see how Hollywood and some very clever marketing masked a seriously harsh reality in the banana industry. An industry, by the way, dominated by American giants like Dole, Chiquita, and Del Monte. This contrast brilliantly illustrates the cognitive dissonance we've been sold. Back in the 1940s, right during the U.S. Good Neighbor policy, we got the singing Chiquita banana cartoon, which was inspired by Hollywood stars like Carmen Miranda. It presented this cheerful, exoticized illusion of Latin America to U.S. housewives. But the plantation reality? Completely different. The real women in this industry were standing in damp packing houses, doing the grueling piece-rate work of cutting and washing pesticide-soaked fruit just so it would look perfect on supermarket shelves. When we follow the money from a single dollar spent on bananas, it becomes shockingly clear who actually holds the power in this globalized food system. Supermarkets take a massive 34 cents of that dollar. Meanwhile, the actual producers and the workers combined, they get just 5 cents. I mean, that is a staggering imbalance, and it relies heavily on keeping those packing house wages as close to absolute zero as possible. To humanize these statistics, the research introduces us to Tess. She's a packing house worker for a Chiquita subsidiary over in the Philippines. Tess was making approximately one single dollar a day. Just $1. She shared a bunkhouse with 100 other women, sending a third of her earnings back to her family, all while enduring a reddish chemical burn on her leg from the pesticide washing solution. Tess's daily reality absolutely shatters that cheerful illusion printed on your corporate banana sticker. All right, on to Section 3, fast fashion and locked doors. Shifting from the fruit in our kitchens over to the clothes in our closets, we see how the consequences of feminized, outsourced labor can literally turn deadly. 112. That staggering number represents the tragic human toll of the 2012 Tazreen Fashions factory fire in Bangladesh. The majority of these victims were young women, and they were sewing garments for global brands you probably have in your closet right now. Brands like Walmart, Disney, and Gap. Sumi Abedin's harrowing testimony forces us to confront the true, lethal cost of this fast fashion cycle. Sumi was just 23 years old, working 11 hours a day, 6 days a week, for $55 a month. When the fire broke out, supervisors actually told the women to stay at their machines. Why? Simply because global corporations demand tight, completely unforgiving production deadlines. What makes this truly devastating is one specific detail. The factory door opened inward. Now, this was a lethal fire code violation. In the absolute panic, workers were crushed against a door that couldn't open because it was designed poorly, while other exit doors were literally locked by management to prevent material theft. Just think about that. A single inward opening door trapped these women. Let's unpack this further in Section 4, how labor is made cheap. So, how do factory owners and global brands actually justify paying women absolute pennies for such grueling, dangerous work? Well, let's break down the mechanics. The research identifies 4 specific interlocking patriarchal myths used globally by management to suppress wages. First up, They claim sewing is a natural female instinct, right? Not a trained skill that deserves fair compensation. Second, they reserve the officially skilled, higher paying jobs for men. Third, they pretend women are just secondary earners who don't need a living wage, totally ignoring that many are the sole providers for their entire families. And fourth, they dismiss the work as just a phase before a woman gets married.
Looking at these two roles really reveals the absolute absurdity of how skills are gendered purely to cheapen the cost of the final garment. Think about it. Sewing a complex pocket is dismissed as a natural, low-paid female trait, but operating a zipper machine? Suddenly, management deems that a skilled, male profession requiring higher pay. It's entirely arbitrary. It's designed specifically to keep the bulk of the labor force, the women, cheap.
Moving out to the macro level, Section 5, Bankers and Heavy Industry. Let's zoom out a bit to the global architecture that enforces this devaluation from the very top. Because, hey, this isn't just about factory owners, it's about the entire global financial system. This industrial divide maps out exactly where the power lies. Heavy industries like steel and autos, those are masculinized and hold elite national political power. But light industries like garments and toys are deliberately feminized. Because the workforce is viewed through those patriarchal myths we just talked about, a garment worker's struggles are marginalized and easily ignored by male-dominated political systems and international banking institutions. And here is exactly where the bankers come in. International lenders demand structural adjustment from debt-laden nations. They pressure governments to create export processing zones. To attract foreign companies, governments promise tax breaks, police protection, and crucially, cheap labor. And who makes up at least 70% of the workforce in these zones? You guessed it, women. Essentially, international bankers demand that governments offer up impoverished women just to balance their national checkbooks.
But there is resistance. Section 6, Women Organizing for Change.
The story doesn't end with exploitation now. The women embedded in this system are actively organizing and dismantling it from the inside. Following the history of the bananeras, the women banana workers, we see that back in 1985, Honduran women in the Citaradco Union proposed a women's committee and were literally laughed out of the room by their male peers. But they didn't stop. By 1988, they built alliances and launched their committee. Fast forward to 2012, and union leader Iris Munguia is sitting across from Chiquita's corporate executives, forcing them to the bargaining table to officially address sexual harassment on their plantations. That is a massive shift. And similarly, over in the garment industry, we see incredible, dangerous resistance. When a factory burns down, global brands often immediately deny they ever even did business there. So labor advocates like Kopona Akhter in Bangladesh are literally risking their lives rushing into the smoldering ashes of these factories to retrieve the brand labels. They pull the physical evidence straight from the rubble to ensure these massive global corporations cannot deny their complicity and are held accountable on the world stage. To wrap this explainer up, the source material leaves us with a deeply provocative challenge. The next time you check a price tag on a shirt or buy a bunch of fruit, ask yourself, who was forced to pay the hidden costs to make this so incredibly cheap? We really have to start looking at our own everyday consumption with entirely gender-focused eyes, recognizing the hidden thread of women's labor that truly prices the world around us.